Hi, my name's Dana Harris Seeger. Welcome to the studio at Visual Philosophy. Today I want to talk about the different types of linoleum and what that means for you in terms of skill level, detail, and cutting capabilities. So the first one that I want to talk about is this, what's called easy cut linoleum. And when we talk about linoleum, that is a type of material that's usually an oil-based product or a petroleum-based product that is kind of like the linoleum that you think about in your flooring. Same type of thing, except this is specifically made for carving in order to create a relief print. So there's varying degrees of hardness or stiffness, and there's also different types, either mounted or unmounted. So this one is unmounted, and you can see that it's just a flexible piece of linoleum, and it's easy to carve in the sense that your tools, if they're sharp, will just glide through the linoleum and create your relief print. It is very thin, and I'll get up close, but you can see that I've actually carved through a hole in a couple places. So you have to be careful of that with the unmounted linoleum because it is very thin, and if you're carving deeply, then you might go through to the other side. But it is nice, this gray type of linoleum, because you can get pretty fine detail, but it's very easy to carve through. Your tools aren't going to get stuck and kind of chip through. So I like this for beginners because you can get a certain amount of detail. It lasts for repeated printings, and meaning you can print it over and over again. And if you so choose, you could mount them to a piece of wood like this. So this type of linoleum comes mounted on a block, and it is called Battleship linoleum. And the Battleship linoleum comes either in like this reddish color or gray, and the gray is where it gets its name Battleship because it was painted Battleship gray. So if you hear the word Battleship linoleum, that's what it means. But it's the hardest of the linoleums, and it's often hard for beginners to carve because it's so stiff that they find it difficult to actually get their tool through the linoleum. But I like it because you can get really fine detail, like super thin lines, just like you would in a woodcut. Because it's so dense. It can be tricky to carve, but a tip for that is to heat it up. So if it's mounted like this, you can use a heat gun or even a hairdryer, but a heat gun will get up a lot higher than a hairdryer. And when you heat it, then the surface becomes a little bit more soft and more pliable and easier to carve. You do have to keep heating it up because it won't retain that heat longer than like 10 minutes. But that's a good tip if you are finding that it's difficult to get a smooth line with your tools. This kind you can get unmounted and then mounted, of course, on a block. And the one of the benefits of that is if you were using a letterpress to print your block prints, you could create your block so that it would be type high, and you can actually put it on the press with some letterpress type and print it at the same time, or just print it on the same press. But I don't think most of them don't come exactly type high, so you'd either have to add a little piece to the back or mount it yourself. So that is a little bit about the stiffest kind of linoleum, the Battleship linoleum. And then the softest type of linoleum that is generally the cheapest and what beginners start with is this like soft, sort of spongy, often called easy cut or easy carve as well. And you can see it's very floppy, it's very squishy, which makes it really great to carve fast and quickly because you don't have to spend a lot of time getting that detail. It really doesn't hold a lot of detail. And if you're planning to make a lot of prints, so like an edition of, I don't know, more than 20, I would say don't use this kind, because with repeated pressure of printing either by hand or using the press, it will squish down and your edges won't be nice and crisp anymore. They'll kind of round out. And on that note, I would not recommend using this kind of linoleum on a press because it's so squishy that the ink might, it does actually, I've tried it, it squishes out and you get sort of this weird halo effect. So I would stick to printing this type of linoleum by hand. But it's really great for doing simple shapes like this star that I used for wrapping paper. And you know, up close you can see that it does have, it's starting to wear and get a little bit rounded along the edge parts. It's really easy to cut though if you wanted to cut out a shape and not use the whole block, because in this case I had to carve away this whole negative space. If you just wanted to cut that, super easy to do with a X-Acto blade or a box cutter or utility knife, and just cut around the shape. But you can see that doesn't really get that fine a detail. So this one is a great middle of the road, kind of good for beginners, and as you get more advanced and want to do more detail and prints that will be able to be printed a lot more times. But if you want to go for the Battleship linoleum, it's well worth it and more akin to the texture or the type of cutting that you can get with a wood cut. The advantage is it doesn't have a grain, so just like using a piece of plywood or a press board masonite, you can get a range of curves and lines in any direction, and it won't limit you because of the grain of the wood. So that's why I like linoleum, and particularly the Battleship linoleum. I hope that gives you an idea of some choices and sets you on the right track for your block printing.